Whew, man. So let's begin our roast of a wonderful former UN ambassador who has been ousted and whatnot. And he's been so steadfast in his support for having a war with everybody. So I'm going to play some parts of this goofy little speech of his, and we can probably go from there, or we can go from there rather. I was kind of thinking about what topic to do because I didn't want to have a UK redux because we had the thing with Boris getting exposed for apparently groping or whatever. That's what they're claiming. But let's start. So I'll play it right now.
John, I appreciate the kind words of introduction, and I want to thank the Center for Strategic International Studies and Junang Ilbo, the host of today's forum, for their invitation to speak. I think this is the 9th or 10th such forum, and it's a great opportunity, very timely, to discuss a lot of critical issues. And I also want to congratulate CSIS and John and Victor Cha for this is also the 10th anniversary of the Korea chair at CS.
I want to congratulate the U.S. for not having this as our national security advisor anymore. All right.
CIS. And so it marks a decade of contributions that the chair's nonpartisan, objective research has made to the public policy debate on Korean issues that are so important to the American people and to the Korean people. It's really been, again, an accomplishment for Victor and John and all of CSIS. I am delighted to be here today. I'm also sure the leadership of North Korea is delighted that I'm here today in a private capacity.
The leadership of my channel is also very satisfied. So we're all sitting together.
At least that's what I've read. Perhaps they'll be a little less delighted now that I can speak in unvarnished terms about the grave and growing threat that the North Korean nuclear weapons program poses to international peace and security. Let's start with a couple of what I think the main precepts of dealing with the North Korean nuclear weapons threat are. First, it remains unacceptable for North Korea to have deliverable nuclear weapons. Now, by the word unacceptable, I don't mean some rhetorical flourish by a politician. I mean that our policy should be that we do not accept it. We will not accept it. Second, it seems to me clear that the DPRK has not made a strategic decision to give up its nuclear weapons. In fact, I think the contrary is true. I think the strategic decision that Kim Jong-un is operating through is that he will do whatever he can to keep a deliverable nuclear weapons ability and to develop and enhance it further. He may try to get relief from international sanctions. He may make some concessions, but under current circumstances, he will never give up the nuclear weapons.
Well, that's kind of how negotiation goes. When you want something from the other side, you both give and take. So if the U.S. could make it to where they sign a peace treaty of, okay, well, you get rid of some of your nukes, we'll get rid of some of ours, cut both of ours in half. Nobody's fully happy, but it's still a better circumstance than the current one, which is we need our nukes because the U.S. might strike us at any point for whatever reason they can conjure. Splendora says, wasn't he the one that was fired after only a couple of days because he couldn't get along with anyone? Or no, you're thinking of Scaramucci. Bolton is the year-long national security advisor we had that was ousted about 2-3 weeks ago. And Amarad says, didn't Bolton get the memo? You've been fired, Bolton. Get a job. I bet Israel will give you one. Yeah, they love Israel so much.
Voluntarily. Now, this is, if you will permit a personal observation, this question of whether there is a strategic decision to give up nuclear weapons is what the Libya model of 2003 and 2004 properly understood actually means. At that period, we saw Muammar Gaddafi make an unambiguous decision that he and Libya.
No, Mirage, that's why he's stupid, because he went on Fox News in a public interview and said, we should apply the Libya model to North Korea. We topple you, and after you give up your weapons, so we get you to take away all of the things you have to defend yourself, and then we throw you out of power. Now, if you're Kim Jong Un, or any person in any kind of official capacity in North Korea, why in the hell would you even want to interact with anyone from the U.S. in diplomatic terms when they're saying something like that? When a top one of the highest ranking officials having to do with American foreign policy is dumb enough to get on TV and say that, why would you want to be affiliated with us in any way? But he's explaining it right here, so I'll play it.
Would be better off without developing nuclear weapons. He came to that decision for a variety of reasons, because of the overthrow of Saddam Hussein by a U.S.-led coalition, the subsequent capture of Saddam Hussein, and the seizure of the ship, the BBC China, and its delivery of nuclear components, uranium enrichment components manufactured by the AQCON Proliferation Network, that told him that we knew what he was up to. And at that point, he made the clear decision that he was going to give up nuclear weapons. We have seen not only nothing like that from North Korea, as I say, we have seen the opposite. And I think it's important to understand that the current.
Also, North Korea is doing the correct thing that any country that does not want to be toppled by the U.S. would do. Look at what we've done in the past with other countries that we've had a similar relationship to, this like antagonistic but still a little bit of a chance for diplomacy angle, and then do whatever the side that fell did not do. So if you're looking at the Libya model, don't give up your weapons. I mean, it's not hard to, like, they're trying to make North Korea seem like they're filled with all these evil people that are plotting to do all these horrible things to the U.S., but they're just looking out for themselves amid a global superpower that wants to screw with everyone it can.
North Korea moratorium on testing of nuclear weapons and testing of ICBM, intercontinental range ballistic missiles, tells us nothing about either North Korea's intention or its strategy as it's playing out. One reason, one very good, very troubling reason why there's no more testing of nuclear weapons for the moment, or of long-range missiles, is that North Korea has, in its judgment, for well or ill, finished testing and can produce nuclear warheads and long-range ballistic missiles. That's not an encouraging sign. That's a sign to be worried about. Moreover, the of shorter range ballistic missiles that we've seen in recent months doesn't give us any reason to think that those are not threatening, because the capabilities, the technology, things like maneuverability of close range or short range ballistic missiles, by definition, can be adopted to longer range ballistic missiles. So that indeed the testing that's going on now is not unthreatening, unless, of course, you happen to be in South Korea within range of these missiles, but bodes poorly for the defensive capabilities of Japan and even the United States when you get to the intercontinental range.
So, I mean, couldn't the same logic be applied to the U.S.'s nuclear weapons, that, oh, if you're right next to us, they can get you now, but if you're further away and we get to the intercontinental range, it will go after people that are further away? Should the whole world be at war with us or trying to get us to limit our stuff? This is why I don't like American exceptionalism, because it makes people stupid. If we have nuclear weapons and we're not using them on other countries, then we should have the exact same position of other countries that have these same weapons, actually a smaller variety, and assume good faith in that they're not going to use them, because they haven't. Every time they've talked about using them, they've been provoked. Okay, Roman says, Very legitimate reason for North Korea to go about their business as they see fit, painting North Korea as the antagonist for everything is US MO. Ruben says US needs regime change. Hey, election next year, we're working on it. Music Fiend says America should go to war with Bolton. Oh, don't, Music Fiend, don't say that. That's a little too. You know how YouTube is. Yeah, we're kind of at the point where if you make any sort of what could be perceived as threatening comment, like you could say what you just said right now. You won't know no nukes, but they'll still interpret that to mean you're calling for some violence against this guy. So Namaraj says Bolton thinks Iraq and Libya are accomplishments only for Israel. Bolton, America didn't benefit at all. Yes, we did. We got to have more of our soldiers litter the graves and the various cemeteries. We were very successful in increasing the number of casualties on our side. That was the top legacy of that conflict. And let's see. Namaraj says he's right in response to Music Fiend's comment. I mean, again, I'm just looking out for the fact that we are in an era where any sort of non insulting but more so threatening comment can be interpreted as anything. People get freaked out over stuff. And then Ruben says some guy on Twitter and that he got threatened to get his account because he told Bolton to, well, yeah, F off. Yeah, that's enough at this point. And look, remember what happened to me? I was going around making fun of people for being, Netanyahu bootlickers and jizz drinkers and all the other terms you could use. Nothing about Jews, and then still gets removed. So I'm done with even trying to like pretend as if these places are not run by people who have their own agendas and purposely misinterpret comments.
Now, in the past, we had been very clear what our expectations were of North Korea, both with respect to nuclear weapons and ballistic missile testing. If you look back to UN Security Council Resolution 1695, adopted on July the 25th, 2006, and Security Council Resolution 1780.
There's a significance to that date. I remember he was the U.S.'s UN ambassador in 2006, so he might have been in office when that was. He's trying to harken back to when he was UN ambassador under Bush. It's like, oh, remember that good old time we had that resolution.
18, adopted on October the 14th, 2006, after in the first instance, 1695, after North Korea broke its moratorium on launch testing of ballistic missiles from the Korean Peninsula, and for 1718, after a nuclear weapons test, the United States and the Security Council were very clear in their response. I know this because I helped write both of those resolutions. 1695 dealt only with missiles. 1718 dealt with both. And I'll quote from 1718 just to remind everybody how clear it was. In operative paragraph 2, the unanimous Security Council said, and I quote, demands that the DPRK not conduct any further nuclear test or launch of a ballistic missile. And in operative paragraph 5, the Council said that it decides that the DPRK shall suspend all activities related to its ballistic missile program, and in this context, reestablish its pre-existing commitments to a moratorium on missile launching. North Korea today, as we speak, is violating those resolutions.
Yeah, the U.S. can write a million resolutions. They're not going to make another country follow them when there's no good reason. Namaraj says, my grandpa fought in Korea. How the hell is this war still going? That's because we didn't end it. We just had an armistice under Eisenhower. And then all the other presidents after that kind of just forgot about it. Namaraj says, Korea has every right to defend themselves. Ruben's, okay, yeah, I already read that. So we got the comments all together.
Now, I say this not because of a theological commitment to UN Security Council resolutions. I say it because when the United States, having led the fight to get those resolutions, says we really don't care. Countries can draw the conclusion that they don't really care about the sanctions contained in those and other resolutions. So when you ask for consistent behavior from others, you have to demonstrate it yourself. And when we fail to do that, we open ourselves and our policy to failure.
I mean, we opened ourselves to failure by being in 7 wars that have yet to end after multiple years and 2 presidents of differing political parties and supposedly differing beliefs. Namarad says, where is he speaking? Is he in Asia? This is the CSIS form. It's some kind of strategic gathering of warmongers. There was an article that was posted in The Hill, and that's how I first found out about this. So let me see if I can grab it. Also, I'm having some trouble because my space bar is acting up. I get very upset. Let's see. The Center for Strategic and International Studies. So it says he gave this today, and it was uploaded really, really quickly. Some CFR meeting or something. Well, that's usually how these people go when their political careers basically end. They go around just giving speeches at random places. I mean, we had a speech from Hillary on, I think it was Friday, where she got some reward and she took the opportunity to start trash talking Trump, and I'm like, just get the damn medal and leave. So that's what they do. They turn these different events into like a rebuke of all their enemies or whoever's currently doing stuff.
Now, remember also what it is that caused the concern in 2006 when North Korea broke this moratorium. In 1998, North Korea, for the first time, launched a ballistic missile that landed in the Pacific Ocean east of Japan, which, needless to say, got the attention of people in that country.
Hey, well, he gives you a history lesson and then tries to use that to peddle why we should have more wars, even though they failed in the past. I'll go get some to eat. Hold on.
And the moratorium was intended to signify that North Korea was behaving in a more responsible fashion. And yet the only thing they really gave up was launch testing. Static testing continued, a very important part of missile development. And all of the evidence we have in the public domain is that North Korea simply shifted its emphasis on launch testing to cooperation with Iran, which was also developing Scud-based missile technology to create delivery systems for nuclear weapons. So that the 1998 Taepodong launch by North Korea and the subsequent enhancement of cooperation with Iran was actually a clear demonstration, not of responsible behavior, but of the continued aspiration to have deliverable nuclear weapons. So I think right now we are in a classic standoff with North Korea. They want a piece of something that we should not be prepared to give them. Now, people will say, but what can be hurt? What can be lost by negotiation? What about partial agreements?
Yeah, what can be hurt? What can be lost through negotiation? What about partial agreements? Let's hear what his response is.
Why not have some progress? Look for some indication of something that North Korea can do that will allow us to alleviate the sanctions. There are several points, I think, that are important to understand here. If you believe, and you may not, if you believe it is unacceptable for North Korea to have nuclear weapons. First, for the would-be proliferator, a partial lifting of sanctions is far more important than it is to the opponent of proliferation to have a partial cessation of a nuclear weapons program. The history, whether it's with respect to North Korea or Iran, is very clear that the economic kick to the proliferator of getting economic benefits and relief from sanctions is far more beneficial than a marginal reduction in the nuclear weapons effort. So from the perspective of the proliferant country, action for action, as the North Koreans call it, is a way to sustain their authoritarian political system, keep their economy going, and yet still have the benefit of the bulk of their ballistic missile and nuclear programs. And there's a world out there that's ready to fall succor to that kind of argument. Even now, we see governments, particularly South Korea, watching North Korea test KN 23 and KN 25 missiles, but providing them food aid because the North Koreans say their harvests have been bad and economic conditions are difficult.
They are difficult. We put all these damn sanctions on them. Like, think how crazy this is. We're upset with you over your weapons. We're not going to try and negotiate with you because we recognize the fact that you're in charge of your own arsenal. No, we're going to put sanctions on your people who have nothing to do with the development of any of this trash, and then we're going to like hope that they get so mad at you that they rebel, and then you give up your stuff because of public pressure, even though that's never happened in the past. So why would it happen now? But he really tries to make it seem like North Korea was claiming that their people were having such a hard time with the crops, and it's like, yeah, why? What reason would they have to lie about that?
So difficult they can't launch ballistic missiles, but too difficult to buy food for their people. And as I say, there are people who succumb to that line of argument.
They succumb because we have a global economy. We're all getting stuff import. Like if China puts a ban on U.S. imports or exporting, a lot of us won't even have any clothes because they come from China. Well, not all, but you get the point. That there's a ramification from sanctions and from these different new laws that are coming around from these trade wars and other economic conflicts. Okay, Namaraj says China allegedly found a massive oil reservoir. They say it holds billions of tons of oil. If they're telling the truth, that will be a bit of a game changer in Asia. Sanctions are an act of war. Just like Ravel said, sanctions have killed more people than the atomic bomb. A true fact. The sanctions in Iraq during the 90s killed hundreds of thousands of children. Yeah. That's why I said we're run by pricks. We just do things to people that have nothing to do with anything. That's why those drone strikes that Obama launched were confirmed to have killed 90% the wrong people that they weren't even targeted toward. But we still kept doing them anyway because we don't care. As long as it's not someone that is a singer or a journalist or some other notable figure, doesn't matter. The U.S. right now could drop a bomb in my state of California and kill, I don't know, 3 million people, and it would just be like, whatever. But if they killed, I don't know, some random singer, oh my God, we've got to investigate why these weapons were expunged over here because this led to the death of a talented person. You get my point. Ruben says, were those drones even targeting anyone in particular? Yeah, they were supposed to go after members of, first it was Al Qaeda and then it was ISIS following 2014 when they were doing the head chopping off videos. So yeah, they were targeting people, and then they kept hitting the wrong person over and over again. Like who uses something that fails 90% of the time?
Now, this is, I think, something that we can apply this lesson both to Iran and North Korea, because there's a second common element as well, and that is the element of time. Time for a would-be nuclear weapon state is not a neutral factor. In fact, the more time that goes by, almost inevitably benefits the proliferant because it takes time to overcome the complex scientific and technological difficulties inherent in a nuclear weapons program. So when we say, well,
this stuff isn't that damn complex. North Korea has weapons because they want to protect themselves. The U.S. doesn't want them to have them because they want to enact regime change. And they know those weapons will be very destructive if used by North Korea effectively. And the only way to really solve this is to just sign a peace treaty. You leave them alone, we leave you alone. So like all this talk about dictators and a non-democracy, man, I couldn't care less.
We're in no rush for negotiations. We're in no rush for a resolution of this. We're saying to North Korea and Iran, take your time, keep going. You've got more time to plan, to test, to produce, to deploy these capabilities. Time works against those who oppose nuclear proliferation, and a relaxed attitude to time is a benefit to the likes of North Korea and Iran.
I mean, to Trump's credit, he did meet with Kim Jong Un twice in less than a year in June of last year in February. But the thing about the first meeting was they had this nice formality, and all the TV channels were, ecstatic about showing this on cable, but they didn't really sign much of anything. And then the last one just kind of went nowhere as well. And actually, I still can find videos of Bolton trying to defend the second one as not being a failure, even though it was considered that by pretty much both sides of the aisle, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. If you're someone that's a peace advocate, you're going to kind of get pissed that these two people who've been having a war of words for literally over a year are just kind of sitting around and wasting time, for no reason.
And then finally, and this applies specifically to the circumstances on the Korean Peninsula, for about a year and a half, the United States and South Korea have not had what some called war games. We have not had large-scale military training exercises. Now, I'll leave it to the Pentagon to describe exactly what we have been doing, but I think you're all familiar with what I'm talking about. It is inevitable that when exercises are not taking place, readiness can come into question. And a failure to be militarily prepared results in a weakening of structures of deterrence. Now, I'm not going to make any assertions here today about the level of American and South Korean readiness on the peninsula. But someday, whether from the Department of Defense or from congressional investigation, we are going to hear judgments on what military readiness is. And I think that this is something that should be a priority both for Americans and for South Koreans. Now, there are other issues here that I don't think are currently adequately addressed in the public debate. Not only should we be concerned with North Korea's own weapons technology, but to the ongoing danger that North Korea will sell nuclear weapons and ballistic missile technology or actual weapons and missiles themselves to other aspiring proliferant states. That is a risk of
Oh yeah, Ruben, I know that that Kissinger was meeting with Pompeo, and I know that Sanders tweeted that he was one of the most destructive secretaries of states, and that if I'm president, we won't take any advice from. I saw that. I didn't see it on Twitter. I saw the this news article because The Hill did an article about it. So that was another little thing I just noticed. I'm not gonna. I don't want to play this whole thing because he's starting to go into like a word salad. Oh, military preparedness. What the hell is that? Is that more people joining? Is that more people going overseas? I mean, it's a lot of stuff that's not really in defined terms. When he's talking about the UN resolutions that he wrote when he was the ambassador for that respective world body, that's it's still stupid, but it's at least something that's actually factual. But yeah, he's still not over North Korea. It's like a spurned lover. He can't have his regime change. And he started that speech off by saying, "Oh, I was going to talk about them in a way that I couldn't speak of them in the past because I was a government official. But when you were a government official, you wanted to have a war with them, and now as a private citizen, you want to have a war with them. So what exactly was the big difference between not being a government official anymore and now being a private citizen? There is none. Except now they call him former national security advisor." Ruben says, "I think Bolton is referring to investing even more on military spending." Oh, well, I mean, he got his wish. We had a 750 billion military budget this year and a 717 billion one last year. So his dastardly plot worked in that case. I'm just glad he won't be able to oversee its usage. I think all these advisors are so useless, man. All they do is just TYT when they did their segment on this, which kind of sucked because whenever Jenk isn't there, it's not as interesting. He did his own little reaction video where he did a live stream out in the middle of the street or whatever, and they were talking about how they're predicting that Pompeo will be out before either before the end of next year or at the end of this year. Like at some point, it's very unlikely he's going to have any longer tenure than Bolton had. I just can't believe that a certain Splendora Gaming got Bolton and Scaramucci mixed up with each other. That's only because I'd never heard of Scaramucci before he became a member of Trump's cabinet, and Bolton was known as a Fox commentator, as a UN ambassador. He was all over the place doing his little warmonger profiteering, then has the nerve to be a draft dodger saying that stuff. Like whenever someone's a draft dodger and they say, "I still don't want anyone to go overseas," hey, at least they're consistent. But I'm not going to go overseas and get blown to pieces for a conflict I advocate for, but you are. That's why when people were tweeting at Trump when he was going, when the second North Korea summit was in Vietnam, I defend him. I said, you guys are making fun of him for not going to war with Vietnam when that war was literally unpopular with people of all different types of classes. They don't want their children to go overseas. I just thought it was the stupidest thing in the world. And I'm saying it as someone that is not a Trump fan at all, but I'm not going to crap talk you for, not wanting to die, basically, or have the chances of dying increase exponentially when you go overseas to that. And that was really insane. And that goes on for another 10 minutes. I just don't want to play the whole thing because I kind of don't want to go crazy. These noises. Or you guys have anything left to say? If not, I'll leave. But before I do, let me see this thing. So, hold on a second. Actually, no, I'll leave. So I hope you enjoyed it. See you later.